The increase in prices of houses is languishing below inflation, which is reflective of the enduring pressure on household incomes amid a depressed macroeconomic environment. This according to the FNB Property Barometer. The valuer's rate indicates the current residential housing demand as weakening and supply strengthening. However, the pace at which properties are entering the market has slowed noticeably in recent months. In contrast to accelerating mortgage advances, there's been a cautious acceleration for the last 11 months, reaching a pace of 4.1% year-on-year by February 2018, the highest in 31 months. This acceleration, however, still lags behind the pace of other credit types such as unsecured credit and vehicle asset finance. To tell us more about this is Sphamandla Mkhwanazi, who is an economist at FNB. Good afternoon and welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Are prices of houses going down?
In nominal terms, they're still going up. It's just that they're not catching up with prices of other goods in the economy. So in real terms, they are going down, but in nominal terms, we are seeing a slight increase in house prices. They're just not catching up with inflation.
Is the impression, or rather the perception, shall I say, regarding the housing market that they are struggling to pick up in as far as their values are concerned?
Yes, yeah, that's just about it. What we are seeing is that over the past couple of months, there's been an increase in terms of supply of houses in the market, houses for sale in the market, and that is influenced by the ever-increasing cost of maintenance of those houses. We've seen administered prices, for example, prices of electricity and prices of water rates and property rates and stuff like that, growing above inflation, and now homeowners are struggling to keep up with the cost of maintaining those houses, and they are now trying to get rid of them. They are selling them. The problem is that there isn't sufficient demand to mop up all that kind of a supply, and that is why you are seeing the balance of the supply-demand balance is tilting towards the buyer. So it's favoring the buyer as opposed to the seller.
Are sellers failing, or rather finding it difficult to name the price, in terms of sometimes they would be able to sell their houses but rather have to drop because of the negotiation on the downside? Exactly.
We find that over 95% of houses at the moment do sell below their initial asking price. As a seller, obviously want the highest price possible, but we find that sellers are finding it more and more difficult to get that initial price. So meaning that the balance of a negotiation is tilting towards the buyer. In other words, it completely is a buyer's market at the moment. So the negotiating power rests with the buyer in this kind of an environment, and that is because there's low demand versus supply.
So what does this mean? Is it a threat to the fixed asset kind of scenario?
I wouldn't say it's a threat. I would say that I mean it would be expected in such a depressed economic environment. We say that not just in the housing market. We say that in the passenger car market, for example, an average price of a car in South Africa over the past year or so has been growing below inflation. So even retailers in that market are finding it more and more difficult to pass on the cost to the consumer. It just speaks to a household sector that is under pressure. We've seen household income failing to breach it has breached inflation rates, but it only barely breaches inflation. If you look at average wage growth in 2018, it was 4.2% versus 4.7% inflation, so it's slightly below inflation. So it just speaks to a depressed household sector that is unable or not willing to take price increases at the moment.
So what does it mean for somebody who wants to buy a house? Is this the right time to get in the market?
For a buyer, definitely. The market is full of good bargains at the moment, but the flip side of that is that for the sellers, it's probably not the best time to sell your house. You are likely not to get your initial asking price, but the fundamentals will have to improve. For example, we need to see the strengthening in the labor market so that household income is supported and the market starts to recover.
So at the moment, we're seeing that there's an erection of townhouses and flats, and most of the time you would see that a townhouse would be going at about 750,000 rand. but the asking price, or in nominal terms, the rental would be going for 5,000 rands, including or excluding water and electricity. What determines that, if somebody really wants to get value out of it?
Look, it's at the moment, because of this depressed economic environment, at the moment, it's all just the supply-demand dynamics at the moment that are driving rental prices. According to Statistics South Africa, average rental escalation has also been languishing below inflation, meaning that even landlords are finding it difficult. I mean, we know in the past that rentals would go by 10%. I mean, it was an accepted fact at the time. But we have passed that time now. We are in an environment where the household is under pressure and not willing to take those exorbitant price increases. So even in the rental market, landlords are finding it difficult to escalate their rentals be above inflation, and that happens in an environment where the cost of running those flats is going up, and as I mentioned, utility costs are rising above inflation at the moment.
When it comes to regulatory and administrative affairs, the cost of buying a house, conveyancing fees and the likes are not going down at all. Should this really be a concern?
Look, they are not going down, but we've seen in the past, I think 2 budgets ago, that there was a scrap of taxes for houses that are below 900,000. So that is a form of give back to the consumer. But secondly, we've seen that financial institutions have come up with innovative ways of trying to boost that first-time buyer. You will find that in many instances, as a first-time buyer, you find that you get a 50% discount on those registration costs and the like. So to boost demand, I suppose the financial institutions are trying to find ways of trying to lure new buyers into the market.
All right. Thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Sphamandla Mkhwanazi.